Boeing's 787 Dreamliner program was launched on April 26, 2004, with an order for 50 jets from Japanese carrier All Nippon Airways, or ANA. The program would be delayed by several years, but it was in 2011 that the jet entered service with the airline. During the 787's first few years of production, Boeing's site in Everett, Washington, was the only facility assembling the aircraft type. However, subsequent years would see a second 787 facility established in South Carolina, with Boeing eventually moving to consolidate Dreamliner production there and end Everett-based 787 assembly. Why did this happen? We take a look for today's video. As noted by Adam Scavett, a regional economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, Boeing had considered several other states to establish this second 787 assembly facility before eventually choosing South Carolina. Candidate sites were also being assessed in California, Kansas, North Carolina, Texas, and Washington. However, Scavett states that by 2009 the company had narrowed down its selection to Washington and South Carolina. He notes that around the time decisions were being made, Everett, Washington had recently undergone organized labor disputes, including a 57-day work stoppage in 2008, a move that had cost the company over $1 billion in profits. While Boeing never has and probably never will publicly acknowledge this as a factor, many others have their suspicions. Indeed, Scavett states, on the other hand, South Carolina was seen as a desirable location for the plant as the Charleston metro area contained several existing parts suppliers for the 787 Dreamliner, and the state held a largely non-unionized workforce. Boeing will argue that it has nothing to do with unions or lack of unions, instead highlighting South Carolina's other virtues. Per an official statement, Boeing said that it had evaluated criteria that were designed to find the final assembly location within the company that would, quote, best support the 787 business plan as the program increases production rates. Pre-existing operations in the area were also cited as a reason, as it was highlighted that Boeing Charleston already performed fabrication, assembly, and systems installation for the 787 aft fuselage sections. Across the street, Global Aeronautica, 50% owned by Boeing, has also been responsible for joining and integrating 787 fuselage sections from other structural partners. An incentive package offered to the company by the state would have been a huge motivator as well. The incentive package, which required Boeing to create 3,800 full-time jobs and invest a minimum of $750 million in the state, offered the plane maker the following perks: $270 million in upfront money from the state, $356 million in property tax breaks, $47.5 million in state corporate tax credits, $33 million for a state-funded worker training program, and $100 million in additional property tax breaks related to the Dreamliner aircraft that flies 787 airplane sections in and out of North Charleston. Of course, asking the union workers in Everett about Boeing's decision, they were certainly accusing the company of retaliation and untoward business practices. As reported by NPR in 2011, the union said Boeing built the plant in non-union South Carolina to retaliate against Washington workers for previous strikes. They went so far as to say Boeing was in violation of the law. More specifically, it was alleged that the company violated federal labor law by deciding to transfer a second airplane production line from a union facility in the state of Washington to a non-union facility in South Carolina for discriminatory reasons. The case became extremely political, with high-profile government representatives getting involved, including then-Governor of South Carolina Nikki Haley and South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham.
And now they're filing a lawsuit saying that the line in South Carolina shouldn't have happened. It's a terrible mistake. The president needs to step up. He needs to say how wrong this is, and we need to get back to business.
I'm standing up for the ability of South Carolina to build Boeing airplanes, and the union complaint against Boeing is frivolous.
And well, several months later, the case was dropped. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, which had originally asked the National Labor Relations Board to file the case, changed its mind, deciding not to pursue legal action. This change of heart was said to have been due to a deal struck between the machinists and Boeing to raise wages and expand jet production in Washington. As noted in the introduction, Boeing would go on to shut down Everett-based 787 assembly, with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic stated as the key driver of this decision to consolidate.
It's official. Boeing is consolidating all production 787 Dreamliners to North Charleston. This move's come after months of study and speculation, and it could bring thousands of jobs and millions of dollars in investments to South Carolina.
Officially confirmed in October 2020, Boeing publicly stated that it was planning to move all Dreamliner production to its South Carolina facility. In a statement at the time, Stan Deal, President and Chief Executive Officer of Boeing Commercial Airplanes, commented, "The Boeing 787 is the tremendous success it is today thanks to our great teammates in Everett. They helped give birth to an airplane that changed how airlines and passengers want to fly. As our customers manage through the unprecedented global pandemic to ensure the long-term success of the 787 program, we are consolidating 787 production in South Carolina. Our team in Puget Sound will continue to focus on efficiently building our 737, 747, 767 and 777 airplane families, and both sites will drive Boeing initiatives to further enhance safety, quality and operational excellence." And then, in February 2021, the final Everett-built Boeing 787 Dreamliner rolled out of the factory, ending a decade of 787 production in Everett. In hindsight, even if a non-unionized workforce was not a deciding factor for Boeing, it has clearly benefited the company, as demonstrated by the recent strike in late 2024, which halted 737, 767 and 777 production. Lasting 1 month, 3 weeks and 1 day and costing Boeing some $5.5 billion in lost earnings, the firm was still able to continue 787 Dreamliner production and delivery as normal due to its non-union workforce in South Carolina. Unionization efforts have been sporadic in South Carolina. In 2018, 178 workers consisting of flight readiness technicians and inspectors voted to unionize. The news came more than a year after a broader union vote failed. In the face of intense resistance from Boeing, workers were to be represented by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Union. However, a little more than a year later, after Boeing appealed the results of the vote to unionize, the National Labor Relations Board ruled that Boeing South Carolina's flight line workers would not be able to move forward with unionization as a separate group. In a 3-1 vote, the board said that the interests shared by the 178 flight readiness technicians and flight readiness technician inspectors were, quote, too disparate to form a community of interest, which is something that is required to unionize. Whether unionized or not, it appears that the recent strike has still benefited Boeing's workers in South Carolina. As highlighted by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Union, non-union employees benefited from the ratified agreement by receiving a 9% standard wage increase and a $12,000 retention bonus. This recent pay increase and retention bonus payout demonstrates how union contracts are a rising tide that uplifts all workers in an industry, whether unionized or not, an official press release stated. So, what do you think of Boeing's decision to establish its 787 Dreamliner facility on the other side of the country? Do you think a non-unionized workforce was a key factor? Or were South Carolina's existing operations and tax incentives a larger part of the decision? Let us know by leaving a comment. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.